Hey guys, thanks for stopping by the bonfire. And today I'm going to be making what I believe will be the hardest video I will ever make. And I will basically be sharing my testimony about how I changed from the man I used to be to the man I am today. And that was all thanks to one person, and his name was Jesus Christ. Now, I just want to start this video off by saying I didn't have the greatest childhood. I actually struggled a lot as a child living in poverty. For most of my childhood, I actually lived in a motel room with my family, all four of us. And while I was living there, I saw a lot of violence. I saw the drug usage and I saw the prostitution on a daily basis. And ever since I was a kid, I still believed in God no matter what was going on at the time. And my mother tried to instill her version of what she believed God was, and tried to raise me the best she could in that sense. But as I grew up, in the poverty and just seeing all the violence and the drug usage and just people that weren't safe to be around, it kind of took a toll on me. And you know, the years passed, a lot of precious years passed. I spent, I think, around 9 to 10 years living in a motel room with my family. Very claustrophobic, having one family stuck in one room at all times. But the years passed. And with that, I gained friendship, I had relationships. And certain things, would bother me, like my father, I never knew my father. And, just those things like just started you know, um, piling up. The issues that I had growing up started to multiply. You know what I'm saying? And they just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And fast forward, a little bit. I'm, working in construction, and I'm doing backbreaking labor. And I would go to job sites and, out of nowhere, something catastrophic would happen, right? Like a pipe would burst and just like crazy things would happen. And people would be like, how did this happen? Why are things like this happening? And I legitimately used to believe it was because I was there, because I thought I was a curse. I thought I was a curse on the world. And whenever I would show up to places, just something bad would happen, something bad would happen. And I would just be like, it's because of me. It's because of me. It's because I'm here. I'm a curse. And that's why things are going wrong right now. And, I lived a lot of my life believing that I was this curse, right? And, you know, as I got older, all these problems just kept piling up, piling up, piling up. And luckily I met my fiance when I did, because I was in a very, very dark time um at that period of my life. I wasn't having good um situations arising with my family. Our relationship honestly has completely stopped. It has halted, which is unfortunate. It is unfortunate. So basically, um it's just me and her, right? And her family, which I am blessed to have. But the one thing I wanted more than anything in life is the one thing I couldn't have, which was my family. That was the one thing that I wanted more than anything. Um so yeah, that took a big part of me to deal with those things. And like I said, all these things have just like compiled upon each other, and I just started living my life just hating it. I hated waking up legitimately. I would roll out of bed, and I would see the sunrise. And it was a beautiful sunrise. I won't lie. I used to wake up and see a very beautiful sunrise every day. But during that time period, it was just so bad that I would look at this beauty, and I would just wish that in an instant it just all turned to black. I just wished everyone would stop existing at the same time because I was just so hurt. I was just so um deeply hurt from everything that had happened to me. And you know, during that time, like I said, the only thing I wanted, cuz me and my family, we grew up in poverty, so I was like, we all shared in this together. So I was like, the only thing I want now is to have our family be whole again. I wanted us to, thrive together. And I would go to their apartment and stuff, and I would see no food in the fridge. And it reminded me when I was a kid not seeing food in the fridge. And luckily I was, at a good spot in that time period. And when I would come, visit them, I couldn't look at that empty fridge. I would go out and I'd spend hundreds of dollars on groceries to make sure that it was full because I was like, I can't see their fridge empty like this. I can't. I was like, I just couldn't allow it, you know. Um, but it didn't matter how much I did for them, Not saying that, like, don't get me wrong. It's very hard to express every single thing that happened in a very short video. But I tried buying my family clothes and stuff like that, some nice shoes and stuff like that, just so they could finally look nice. They used to have like holes in their clothes and stuff like that, and I just wanted them to have nice things. But unfortunately, I don't know what it is. Maybe it just wasn't in the cards. I don't know, but I just think that maybe I just wasn't the priority. And the greatest way that I can explain this is, I hadn't seen them for Thanksgiving in like 4 or 5 years. So I told them, yeah, we're gonna have Thanksgiving. I bought every single thing that you could think of for Thanksgiving. And I told them, yeah, come over, come over, come over. And they decided to hang out with drug addicts instead of seeing their son for Thanksgiving. And I think that specifically was almost like the final nail in the coffin. I think so. I mean, after this, they'd be like, "Why are you being so sensitive?" And I'm not really understanding how I'm being sensitive. I'm trying to have a family. I'm trying to have us be whole again. And no matter what I do, it's just blowing up in my face. And you're just upset. You're upset with me, and I've done all I can. And basically, after this incident, um, I would just spend hours crying, legitimately just crying. And I was in a very bad spot, at this time. And yeah, I would just spend hours, just staring at a wall, just crying legitimately. And my fiance didn't, enjoy seeing me like that. And she would always say, this is kind of difficult to say, but she would always say, one day I'm gonna win. I'm gonna overcome, all the hurt and the anger that's inside of you. She would say, one day I'll win. And shortly after that, I was, like I said, I was religious, but I didn't understand what I signed up for. I guess that's the easiest way to explain it. I didn't understand what I signed up for. I thought believing in God was the relationship. But what I didn't understand was that just because you believe in something, that doesn't mean you have a relationship. You know, um, you can believe you have a friendship with someone, but if you don't go to their house, you don't talk to them, you don't have dinner, and they're just a Facebook friend, then how is that a friend? You think you're a friend, it's kind of the same thing with God. Like, how do you expect to have a relationship with Him if you don't do anything that is showing you have a relationship with Him, right? Now, I'm going to explain what I mean by all that. So, I had thought that I had believed in God, and I had people throughout my life try and inch me closer and closer to the idea of God properly. And I had thought I understood it. But, I tried doing it my way for so long. I looked at the motivational videos. I went to the therapy. I looked at philosophy. I studied philosophy as hard as I could. I thought somehow man could figure out how to deal with his own problems. And keep in mind, like I said, I believed in God, but I wasn't doing my research on it. I wasn't reading the Bible. I wasn't even doing anything to try and have a relationship. All I did was believe. Now, one day specifically, this is where everything basically culminated into this giant revelation, right? Um Basically, she had went out to go get some groceries and I was by myself. And a YouTube video actually popped up for me and it was titled Jesus Died for Your Sins. And it was showing the crucifixion of Jesus. And I had never looked up anything on YouTube related to Jesus. I was never looking for any of that. I never was. But this specific day in general, I just happened to get recommended this video when I needed it most. And I watched it and I basically collapsed on the floor. Like I collapsed on my knees and basically said, I give up. I give up doing it my way. Um I'm tired of doing it my way. And I could just feel the actual sacrifice that he made. I felt it and I understood it for the first time. And then I realized what having a relationship actually meant. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this is because I understand there's a lot of people out here who just they only they only see darkness. They don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And I was one of those people. Like I said, I would see beautiful sunrises and I just wish that in a snap it all turned to dark. I didn't want any of this to exist anymore. I would see people with families who are happy. Like I would literally see happy families and wish they understood what I was going through. I wish they understand what a broken family is. I wish they would like have it happen to them. I was very upset. I was very angry, and that was because of everything that had happened to me. But, once I found God, well, Jesus specifically, it all started to finally get a lot less painful. It started to get more realistic to control. Feeling upset, feeling angry, and just not wanting to see the world anymore. All that started to get more quiet. And I have God to thank for that, but I also have my fiance to thank for that too because she never gave up on trying to fix the broken side of me. And you know, it's like it's like I can still hear it, her saying, "One day I'm going to win. One day I'm going to win." And that day came. And I'm grateful to be here. I'm hoping that this video reaches the right person who needs to hear this. Um very very difficult to, compose myself during talking about something like this, especially, posting it on the internet, for everyone to see. And I've had this video in mind for a while. It just took me a lot to be able to make it a reality. And I have no script. I have nothing in front of me right now. This is all just coming straight from the heart, trying to stay composed to the best of my ability for you guys. But I know for a fact that there is someone out here that needed to hear my story. And I've read the comments, I've seen people talking about their struggles and stuff like that. So, that was the reason that I actually decided to put this out. And it's funny. It's like everything in its power tried to stop me from making this video today. From lighting issues to like things falling over. I keep getting notifications, whatever, from my phone, like trying to interrupt the video and stuff. It's like all these things. Oh, and I had to restart this video like 5 times. So at the end of the day, it was like a challenge. And it's like the things that you're supposed to do that are the most beneficial for you to do, not just for yourself but for others. You're gonna see hiccups, and I could have quit. I could have decided, all right, things keep happening to stop me from making this video. But of course, there's always going to be obstacles that are stopping you from doing the correct thing. It almost feels like the world wants you to quit, before you make that beautiful decision to do something right. And I encourage you to do everything in your power, regardless of the setbacks, regardless of what's hurting you today, to continue. And like I said, I'm not the perfect Christian. I'll be the first one to say it. And I'm not saying I have every answer. All I can tell you is my experience. And I used to hear these experiences talking about, my experience with God, and or like near death experiences where like people see God, and they're outside of their body and they're like, "Oh, I'm dead," and just talking about their experience in the afterlife. And I used to think, what are these people talking about? The thing about religion is there's a little bit of uh, unexplainable to it. It's really difficult to understand these things unless you have been there personally and experienced it yourself. I mean, most people may not understand what it's like to completely fall on your knees and give up. Literally, just admit that you have given up trying on your own will, and you're asking for someone else who is omnipotent. They are way stronger than you in every way, shape, or form, and they ultimately have died for your sins. And you don't have to rely on your own strength anymore. You know, someone's already paid for your sins and they have your back. Well, if you guys made it this far in the video, I greatly appreciate you sticking by and listening to this entire testimony that I've put out here for y'all. And like I said, I hope this actually does reach someone and impacts your life today. So, once again, thank you guys for sticking by and letting me do this. I'm hoping for this to be a long term thing for me to do. And I can only do that through your guys' support. So, once again, thank you for stopping by the bonfire. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know how you guys are doing. I'm actually going to put a email address in the description that if you want to send me letters or anything like that, you can do that at that email, and that will be posted in the link below. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Catch you by the bonfire. Peace.